476. Remember that number, because I'm going to come back to it. 91 points. Gone. Not over a year, not over a decade of bad decisions. For millions of Americans, their credit score just fell off a cliff in a single reporting cycle, and most of them didn't even see it coming. I'm Kunal, and here on Failed Finance, I spend my time digging into the financial wreckage that nobody on cable news wants to spend more than 90 seconds on. And folks, what I found this. Time genuinely kept me up at night. Because this isn't a story about some hedge fund blowing up or a crypto exchange going under. This is about your neighbor, your coworker, maybe the person reading this right now. Roughly 1 million borrowers fell into default during the fourth quarter of 2025, and another 2.6 million borrowers did so in the first quarter of 2026, according to the New York Fed. Sit with that for a second. 3.6 million people in 6 months pushed into federal student loan default. To put that in perspective, that's more people than the entire population of Chicago, defaulting on government debt in half a year. And here's the detail that should stop you cold. These 2.6 million borrowers were more than 120 days past due and had their loans transferred to the Department of Education's Default Resolution Group in the first quarter of 2026. That's not a warning letter. That's not a nasty phone call. The Default Resolution Group is the federal government's collections arm, and once your loan lands there, you're in an entirely different legal universe. Now, before we go further, let me be straight with you the way I always try to be. I'm not your financial advisor, I'm not a lawyer, and nothing in this video is personalized advice. I'm a guy who reads the data obsessively so you don't have to, and every situation is different. So treat this as education and talk to a qualified professional before making moves with your own money. Okay, so who are these 3.6 million people? Because the lazy narrative, the one you'll hear at every dinner party, is that these are 22-year-old art history majors who never intended to pay. The data says that narrative is dead wrong. The average borrower entering default is nearly 40 years old, was not past due on their student loans prior to the pandemic, and is more likely to live in the South. Nearly 40. These are parents, mortgage holders, people 15+ years into their careers. And it gets more uncomfortable. Most recent defaulters were not past due before the pause. Nearly 30% were current on their loans and making payments, while nearly half either had not yet taken out student loans or had no payment due yet, and only about 4% were already in default before the pause. Read that again. These aren't chronic non-payers. These are people who were doing everything right in 2019, and somewhere between the pandemic, the restart, and the policy chaos of the last 3 years, the system lost them. How does that happen? Here's the mechanics, in plain English. For over 3 years, the more than 40 million people holding federal student loans didn't have to make payments because of the COVID pandemic. Then payments resumed in October 2023, and the Department of Education offered a 12-month grace period that shielded missed payments from credit bureaus. But that buffer ended on September 30th, 2024. After that, the clock started ticking for real. Since it takes 270 days of missed payments to enter federal student loan default, the fourth quarter of 2025 was the first quarter when new defaults began appearing on credit reports. So this wave we're seeing right now, it was baked in over a year ago. It's a slow-motion car crash that was filmed in advance, and we're just now watching the footage. And the damage to these borrowers is brutal in a very specific, measurable way. This is where that number from the top comes back. On average, credit scores for defaulted borrowers dropped 91 points, from 567 down to 476. 476. Do you know what life looks like at 476? Let me paint it for you, because I don't think most people have ever had to think about it. At 476, you don't get a mortgage. You don't get a car loan at any rate a sane person would accept. Landlords run credit checks, so in a lot of markets, you don't even get the apartment. Some employers check credit for certain roles. Your auto insurance premium can go up. You get pushed toward payday lenders and buy here, pay here car lots, the most predatory corners of American finance, precisely at the moment you can least afford them. And most of these borrowers will be cut off from accessing traditional credit while the default remains on their credit record, which typically lasts for 7 years. 7 years. A default at 39 follows you until you're 46. That's not a setback. That's a lost decade of wealth building during what should be your peak accumulation years. This is where I want to bring in a perspective from the greatest capital allocator alive, because it's weirdly relevant. Warren Buffett has spent 60 years telling anyone who'll listen that the single fastest way smart people go broke is leverage, borrowed money. His famous framing is that if you're smart, you don't need it, and if you're not, you have no business using it. Now, I want to be fair here. Nobody chooses student debt the way a trader chooses margin. An 18-year-old signing a promissory note is not a hedge fund manager. But Buffett's deeper point still applies with full force. Debt removes your margin for error. It converts every bad month into a potential catastrophe. And that's exactly what we're watching at national scale. Millions of people who had zero margin for error, hit by a once-in-a-century payment restart with no cushion left. Buffett also loves to say that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Swap the word. Reputation for credit score, and you have this entire crisis in one sentence. 91 points, gone, and 7 years to climb back. Now, here's the part of the story that genuinely worries me. The part I'd argue is being dangerously undercovered. Default on federal student loans is not like defaulting on a credit card. A credit card company has to sue you, win, and then try to collect. The federal government skips all of that. The federal government has extraordinary collection powers on its student loans. It can seize borrowers' tax refunds, paychecks, and Social Security retirement and disability benefits. No lawsuit needed. And the numbers are not small. Americans in default can have up to 15% of their disposable pay garnished by the government, which can also garnish income tax refunds and Social Security benefits. 15% of your paycheck, taken before you ever see it. Your tax refund, which for a lot of working families is the single biggest cash infusion of the year, intercepted. Even Social Security, money people literally paid into their entire working lives, is on the table. Now, at this exact moment, there's a ceasefire. Collection efforts for defaulted federal student loan borrowers are currently suspended with no clear timeline for resumption. The administration announced in mid-January that it was delaying involuntary collections on borrowers in default, with the Education Department saying collections would function more efficiently and fairly after significant improvements to the student loan system. But please hear me on this. A pause is not a pardon. The debt doesn't disappear. The default doesn't come off your report. And the Treasury Department is expected to resume broader collection efforts once the current pause on involuntary collections ends, potentially exposing more defaulted borrowers to wage garnishment, tax refund offsets, and reductions in certain federal benefits. If you're in default right now and you're treating this, pause like the pandemic pause, like it'll just keep getting extended forever. You are making a bet with your paycheck as the stake. And I have to ask you honestly, has any of this touched your life yet? Are you, or is someone in your family, staring at one of these statements right now? Drop it in the comments. Not for engagement, but because I read every one of them and the stories you all share genuinely shape what I research next. And honestly, someone in your exact situation is going to. Scroll those comments and feel less alone. Because here's what the aggregate data hides, the sheer scale of where this is heading. As of the end of March, approximately 2.97 million federal borrowers were delinquent on their student loans. Another 9.57 million borrowers were already in default after missing payments for at least 271 days. And if those borrowers do not resume making payments, the total number of delinquent and defaulted borrowers could climb to roughly 12.54 million by the end of 2026. 12.5 million Americans. And the New York Fed itself is warning that the wave isn't done. Borrowers in the now-defunct Save Repayment Plan were put into forbearance during litigation. Very few have re-entered repayment, and a second wave of defaults might emerge as these 7 million borrowers reach the 9-month mark in the repayment period. 7 million more people, sitting on the same conveyor belt, most of them not even realizing the belt is moving. Because here's the thing about the Save Plan collapse that I think most borrowers still haven't processed. The SAVE plan, introduced in 2023 as the most affordable federal option, was blocked by courts in 2024, and a settlement ended the program permanently on March 10, 2026, with about 7.5 million borrowers having spent nearly 2 years in forbearance while the legal fight played out. 2 years of not paying, not because they were irresponsible, but because the courts and the government were fighting over the rules. And now those roughly 7.5 million people enrolled in the now-defunct SAVE plan are receiving notices in July 2026, directing them to choose a new repayment option within 90 days. 90 days. A countdown clock, landing in inboxes and mailboxes across the country right now, this month, and I'd bet real money that a huge share of those notices are going straight to spam folders and junk mail piles. So that's the crisis. Millions already over the edge, millions more walking toward it, a government. With collection superpowers currently holstered but not surrendered, and a 7-year credit scar for everyone who falls. But, and this is why I'm making this video instead of just doom posting, there is, for the first time in this whole mess, an actual functioning exit door. It's brand new. It opened this month. Tens of thousands of people have already rushed through it, and whether it's the right door for you depends entirely on details most borrowers have never been told. That's exactly where we're going next, and I genuinely recommend you don't touch that application until you hear the fine print, because there's a one-way trap inside it that could cost some of you 5 extra years of payments. So let's talk about the door, because on July 1st, something happened that hasn't happened in years. The government actually launched a new repayment system, and people stampeded toward it. The Education Department launched the Repayment Assistance Plan on Wednesday, with at least 46,000 borrowers applying to enroll their student loans in the new program within the first 24 hours. 46,000 applications in a single day. That's not curiosity. That's desperation meeting opportunity. And look, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know I'm Kunal, and you know my whole thing at Failed Finance is that I don't cheerlead and I don't doomsay. I read the actual rules and tell you where the bodies are buried. So here is RAP, the Repayment Assistance Plan. Explained the way I wish someone had explained SAVE before it got vaporized in court. First, the basics. RAP is the new income-driven repayment plan for federal student loans, created by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and as of July 1st, 2026, it's available to eligible student loan borrowers. The payment math is genuinely different from everything that came before. Like other income-driven plans, RAP ties payments to income, but it calculates payments as a percentage of adjusted gross income, whereas legacy plans calculated payments using discretionary income by subtracting 100% or 150% of the federal poverty guideline from a borrower's income. In practice, RAP bases payments on adjusted gross income, scaling from a $10 monthly minimum up to 10% of AGI for those earning over $100,000, with a $1.50 per month reduction for each dependent. So picture a borrower. Let's call her Dana, a dental hygienist outside Nashville making $52,000 with 1 kid. Her AGI puts her in a middle bracket. Her payment is a fixed slice of that income divided across 12 months, minus $50 for her daughter. No poverty line math, no discretionary income formula. Just a sliding percentage of what her tax return says she earned. Simple. But simple cuts both ways, and here's the first thing you need to understand. In previous income-based plans, low-income borrowers could qualify for $0 payments, but RAP requires all borrowers, regardless of income, to pay at least $10 per month. The $0 payment. The safety net that kept the lowest earners technically current is gone. Now, the genuinely good stuff, because there is genuinely good stuff. The single biggest villain in American student debt has always been negative amortization. The horror movie math where you pay every month and your balance grows anyway. Because income-driven plans let borrowers pay based on income, it's common for payments to be less than the monthly accrued interest, and when that happens, borrower's balance can balloon over time through negative amortization. Our app attacks this directly. If you make your required payments on time and the payment is less than the interest that accrued, our app waives any unpaid interest, meaning your total balance will never exceed what you owed when you first entered the plan. And there's a feature no plan has ever had. For borrowers whose payments aren't covering all their interest, RAP allows up to $50 of each payment to go directly to principal. A unique feature no other income-driven plan offers. So a borrower's balance shouldn't just stop growing, it should actually decrease over time. That is a real, structural improvement. For someone like Dana, whose old plan was quietly inflating her balance every month, this is the first time the math has ever moved in her favor. So why am I not telling everyone to sprint to studentaid.gov? Because of the fine print, and this is the section I'd screenshot if I were you. Trap number 1, the timeline. Previously, you could qualify for loan forgiveness under an income-driven plan in 20 or 25 years. With RAP-E, you only qualify if you still have a balance after 30 years of payments. 30 years. Borrow at 22, finish at 52. Trap number 2, the payment size. Payments under RAP-E will typically be higher compared to Save, Pay-E, and the newer version of IBR. Trap number 3, and this is the one-way door I warned you about. Some borrowers hoped they could spend years on RAP enjoying lower payments and interest subsidies before switching to IBR to receive forgiveness sooner, but the final rules prevent that. Repayment history can flow from IBR into RAP-E, but months spent on RAP-E don't count toward forgiveness under IBR. Your RAP months are RAP months, period. Trap number 4, for anyone whose income is shaky. RAP removes economic hardship and unemployment deferments entirely and restricts general forbearance to a maximum of 9 months within any 24-month period, meaning borrowers experiencing job loss must still make monthly payments. And trap number 5, for the parents watching. Parent PLUS loans will not be able to enroll in RAP under any circumstance. So who should actually consider it? Broadly, the people getting crushed by growing balances, and the public servants. Because the new standard plan does not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. Eligible borrowers who want to work toward PSLF will need to enroll in RAP-E, and PSLF forgives the remaining balance. After 120 monthly payments while working full-time for a qualifying government or nonprofit employer. Teachers, nurses, firefighters. For you, RAP isn't optional, it's the on-ramp. Quick question while we're here, and I actually want the answer. If you ran your numbers today, would RAP raise or lower your monthly payment? Tell me in the comments with your rough income bracket. No exact figures, keep it private. Because I'm thinking about doing a full calculator walkthrough video, and I want to. Build it around real situations from this community, not hypotheticals. Now, the action plan, because information without action is just anxiety. Step 1, tonight, 15 minutes, log into studentaid.gov and find out exactly what plan you're on and exactly how many days delinquent you are, if any. You cannot navigate a minefield blindfolded. Step 2. RAP has now been added to the Education Department's loan simulator, so you can run side-by-side comparisons of your repayment options. Run every plan you're eligible for, and note that the department says the online RAP application takes roughly 10 minutes to complete, so applying isn't the hard part. Choosing correctly is. Step 3. If you got a save notice or expect one, do not let it sit. Roughly 7 million borrowers still in the blocked save plan must pick a new plan within a 90-day window after their servicer notifies them. And if you're on any dying plan, mark the outer deadline too. Borrowers enrolled in ICR, Pay-E, or Save must transition to a different plan by July 1st, 2028, and if you don't choose by then, your loans get moved into RAP automatically. Automatic enrollment into a 30-year plan because you ignored your mail. Don't be that person. Step 4, and this is the advanced play almost nobody talks about. Since RAP is calculated off AGI, you can legally shrink your payment by shrinking your AGI. Pre-tax retirement contributions, HSAs, and for some couples even filing taxes separately lower the income RAP uses. Think about that. Every dollar into your 401k simultaneously builds your retirement and cuts your loan bill. That's the closest thing to a free lunch in this entire system. Step 5. If you're already in default, the pause on collections is your window, not your excuse. Contact the default resolution group about rehabilitation or consolidation options before garnishment machinery restarts. Because as one department official made clear, skipping federal student loan payments is no longer tolerated. Not paying your loans is no longer an option. And zoom out with me for the last minute, because this is bigger than any one borrower. A recent Fidelity report found that nearly 1/3, 32%, of those currently paying off student loans have delayed purchasing a home due to their debt, with even higher rates among Gen Z and millennial borrowers at 37% and 36%. That's demand pulled out of the housing market, out of auto lots, out of Main Street, and if the Department of Education returns to garnishing wages and tax refunds of borrowers in default, it could lead to drops in consumer spending, new home sales, auto loans, and more. The Fed's economists say spillover from the recent wave of defaults and delinquencies to broader credit markets is likely to be limited, and maybe they're right. But Buffett has a line I think about constantly, that you only find out who's been swimming naked when the tide goes out. The pandemic pause was the highest tide in the history of American consumer credit. It's going out right now, in real time, and 3.6 million people have already been left standing exposed. Don't let the next quarter's data include you. None of this is individual financial advice. Your situation has variables I can't see, so run your own numbers and, if the stakes are high, get a professional in your corner. If this breakdown saved you even one panicked Google search, subscribe to Failed Finance, because the save wind down, the 2028 deadline, and the collections restart are all still ahead of us, and I'll be covering every twist as it happens. Share this with one person who has student loans. Statistically, you know several who are 90 days from a cliff and don't know it. I'm Kunal. Check your account tonight. I'll see you in the next one.